Yeah. Next part of the warm-up, we've left neuromuscular activation. That's probably the most complicated, if you want to put it that way, because it's sometimes less intuitive as to what the goal of it and the purpose of the exercise is. Now we're doing the joint and limb perfusion. This is the part that is probably more familiar than to everybody, and it's sort of easiest to follow along. Basically, sort of a head-to-toe warm-up. And I usually start with the wrists. And I call them wrist floppers. You just flop them all different directions. And you give it a few 10 seconds or so. Let your fingers wiggle and flop with it too. Particularly if you're about to do any gripping or swimming, you want them to get nice and loosened up too. So it's not specifically mentioned in it, but do that. And the same thing, circles, circle around. There's really only a couple directions the wrists can go. You can specifically go those directions, or you can just kind of flop them. Next is when you get the elbows involved. Now you can do that all at the same time. You can do wrists and elbows. You can do them, they're not really going around and around because it only hinges this way, but it's good to kind of do that because you also want this kind of a pronation, supination motion mixed in with this motion. So getting up and around, up and around, up and around. Just silliness, right? Okay, but it works, getting the juices going. It's okay to get your shoulders in there. They're going to get their separate workout, but the shoulders are probably the most difficult to get truly warmed up, so it's okay to get everything involved, okay? Same thing with the shoulder shrug part of it. Again, it's not explicitly put in there. You'll get some of that with the shoulder workout, but you can do all this at the same time. All right, so the next, I think I put in there, is the shoulders. Now, you're not going to do static stretching. We're going to do dynamic stretching, so it's movement. So I like to go, these are what they call huggers. You're hugging yourself, hug yourself. So as you're doing them, you want palms down. You also want palms up. Now if you notice palms up, I'm not getting as far back. That's okay. Go back, you can bend the elbows a little bit, go back this way. This is one that I'm really tight on, so I tend to do mantra of this. If you do a lot of push-ups, it's going to be tight and across the chest. Okay? And then, of course, there's the sort of front to back. And these are just loosey-goosey. Shouldn't hurt, shouldn't strain. Okay? And then what I call 45s are basically just same kind of concept, but you're going at an angle. Just like so. Okay? To the side. And then the good old classic arm circles. You can do it this way, you can get a little bit of upper body rotation in it, or you can do it the same direction. I particularly like to do it away from the fan. You can do them together this way, together the opposite way, whatever works for you. All right. And then the neck. You got chest and nose. Okay, if you want to add some shoulder shrugs in here, it's another good time. Chest and nose. If you want to do a little rolling, that's fine too. Another good one. Ear to shoulder, ear to shoulder, ear to shoulder, and then one that you may not have seen before, but is an excellent one, and you could actually do the same concept in every different direction with the yes, no's, and so forth, but it's called infinities, and basically you can imagine the infinity symbol, and what you're doing is you're keeping your head on an even plane, but you're going up, around, back, around, up, around, and boy, you'll hear it snap, crackle, pop, and all sorts of good stuff going on. All right, reverse it. That really gets the neck going. Again, you could do infinities at different angles and so forth. But the biggest one that you should do is at least just do side to side like this. Again, you can Go forward, around, into your infinity. Another good one. Like that. Okay. Again, that'll grind and snap, crackle, pop. That just means everything's loosening up. All right. And then next is doing your back. Now, these are dynamic, and so you just want to be kind of loose with it. You don't run a strain. And you're basically just kind of punching forward, rounding out, and rounding back. Rounding forward and rounding back. If you want to put the arms in it, put the arms in it. And I'm not bending so far as I'm toe touching. I'm just kind of going along like this. And then side to side. And yes, it's okay to rock your hips in the opposite direction as you do it. For this one, I'm not bending forward as I do it. I'm keeping on an even plane side to side. Side to side. Side to side. Now I'm going to do it with the twisting sort of movement. I usually start kind of high and then just kind of work down. Okay, and then it seems the silliest is basically just, how do I describe it here? You can use the term wiggle flops. Basically, what you're doing is and this kind of involves the shoulders and the back, and you're just kind of flopping around, and you're wiggling your arms, and you're kind of just side to side and twirling, and you're basically just moving your body all up and around, sort of randomly. It should feel good. You shouldn't have too much discomfort. Now, if you're tightening the hips, then that just means you need to do more with the hips as and they're coming up. So we already did sort of the side to sides, but you need to do some either side to side like so, or what is known as like the hula dancer. Okay. And if you got tight hips like me, you'll want to do these more than just 10 seconds or so. You want to really get some good movement in there. You know, you start out maybe a little higher, and then you add some dipping movement to it, and so forth. And then what's called, you can call them Shakiras, which is kind of like doing the infinity or hip tippers. Now, hip tippers would just be doing side to side like so, but Shakira is to actually kind of do like an infinity where your hip dips down on the opposite side and back and around. So it may take a little coordination to do that, but it works good because what it does is it relative to your spine, your hip is moving up and around and around and around and around. Okay? So then the next is going to be, you're starting to work actually in the hips again, but you're doing it with the legs. If you need to, use a thing like this. Again, this is just dynamic. So what you're doing is you're swinging your leg, front to back, front to back. All right? Now, you're not going super high, you're not going super far behind you, and you're not rotating your hip because it's tight to the side. You're trying to keep your toe pointed straight down as you do it. Okay? You try to go a little higher as you go. That's not the real goal of this. It's just to warm things up. Just to warm things up. It's not super fast. It's just whatever feels right. The next is to the side to side. Okay. And side to side. Nothing too fancy. Same thing opposite side. Now, the actual side bend one, instead of doing it like this to the side where it kind of rotates, you're actually, with the side bend one, it's actually good to put your hand out and you're actually trying to pull it up with the hip to the side. This one might actually be a little challenging for some people, particularly for balance, but and again, you're doing this to wake things up, particularly like your IT bands and your stabilizers of your hips. Get things kind of woken up in there. If you don't do that and you go run, what happens is you're only working your big muscles, but you step on a rock or something a little sideways, that part of the body that's not been sort of woken up is too slow to respond. And so all of a sudden, boom, you torque an ankle, you hurt your hip, you do something that injures yourself. So you want to wake up these kind of funny angle movements, like, why am I doing this? You're doing that in case you step funny, or particularly like with a shuttle run where you're bending and moving at different angles, you need to wake up these accessory muscles. All right, and then you get to your knees. Love this kind of stuff, just kind of round and round. Okay, I also like doing sumo squat sits. Now this isn't for doing like a sumo squat exercise. This is for stretching, and so it has some momentum to it, but you're basically just doing it for the stretch. So your feet are comfortably, maybe not as wide as you would do for a true sumo squat, because what you're doing is you're squatting down, and the goal is you want a good stretch down here. If you can, even push your knees apart a little bit when you get to the bottom and you're coming up. The first couple ones are slow. Then try to just add some speed to it. Keep things good and popping and snapping. And this gets a good stretch in the calf. And also the thighs. Just like that. So your feet they could be a little bit closer, but they shouldn't be way out here. They just should be a little bit closer in than, say, shoulder width apart. If it's too wonky on your knees, go to about shoulder width apart. And your feet are about 45 degrees out. If you can go a little bit wider, that's even better for the stretch, okay? If you want to do a couple of narrow knee, bounce to the bottom kind of stretches too, that's fine too. But at least do the sumo ones, because that's important, because it'll really hit the outside of your thighs that are kind of hard to get. And then it's just ankle kind of stuff. So you can do circles. I actually do the circles. I didn't mention it in here, but the circles are good. So are just kind of doing the rolls to the side, kind of waking things up. But the main one that I've got in here is to do 1-foot hops. So this actually adds a little bit of more dynamic thing to it. You want to go front to back and side to side. Now you can do it in a box pattern or a star pattern or whatever floats your boat. The goal is you want to go back and forth and side to side during the movement. So just hopping back and forth, about a foot or so distance, front to back, side to side, front to back, etc. And so you can do that for a count of 20, or you can do it for a certain amount of time. If your calf is burning, then that's probably enough. Even if you're in good shape, your calf will start to burn pretty quickly. So that just means it's getting, the further your body part is away from your heart, the more challenging it is to get the blood going. So if you feel a little bit of that burn, that means it's good. But you don't want to do it until it's like to the point where you're limping afterwards. Again, this isn't a full workout. And you want to repeat that. Like if I've done that for only that long, okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit. Give yourself 20, 30 seconds and dive right back into it. And again, whatever your count's going to be, whatever your goal frame is going to be. And that is it. If you want to add more things, particularly if you feel like something's tight, this is a good time. Like I said before, you can add some of your other kind of workouts. But the thing is you're probably still not warmed up quite enough to get a good static stretching. So keep things in the ballistic kind of stretch range. So, for example, if you feel like all the back work is still really tight, do more these kind of things. Just do body extensions, kind of bending, twisted kind of things. Just kind of get your body kind of loosened up. I mean, you look silly, but guess what? You're going to be the guy that doesn't have the injuries, and you're going to be faster. So next is going to be your metabolic workout, and it's going to actually look like a workout, but the goal is to actually just get your heart rate up and get the juices going.